This video is sponsored by Squarespace, more on that later. Hi friends, my name is Al or Lilstarnerd. Welcome to the video. Today is part 2. Last week I did a video where I was doing the Pinterest board character design challenge with the theme underwater. This week we're continuing that. I couldn't narrow it down to just 4 boards, so I picked 4 more and we're doing those today. If you would like your board to be featured in a future video, make sure to follow me on Instagram and keep an eye out on my stories, and also keep an eye on the YouTube community tab, because that's where I post a Google form for you to submit your boards when the time comes for a new video. I'm thinking next time I might go without a theme. We've done a theme for a few times now and it's been really fun, but I think it would be fun to just do just totally open characters again. I think that would be cool. I didn't really explain why I do this in the last video, so I thought I would now. However you feel about it, I know that creativity and originality is a weakness for me. I'm really not good at coming up with kind of interesting concepts on my own, but I would really like to, and often it hinders my creative process and the drawing process, and I'm not really interested in creating characters because I just don't know what to do at all. I've been trying for a really long time to get better at character design, but nothing was really working for me. I was trying all sorts of different prompts and generators and nothing was working. And then I remembered this challenge I had done with a friend over on Instagram forever ago, and so I thought I would do it with you guys, and it worked so well. So the point of this is that you guys create some sort of interesting visual concept that gives me a starting point to come up with something interesting that's different and original without me having to start from absolutely zero, which is what I'm really bad at. And slowly, as we've done a couple of these challenges, I've become more and more confident with the concept of character design, and I feel like it's all coming a bit easier to me, and maybe one day I'll be able to do it without anybody's help, which would be good. But yeah, today we're doing part 2 of the underwater characters. That's all we've got. It's just underwater. Like I said, you guys came up with some amazing boards. I'm excited to show you. I've done my sketches. I'm ready to go. So let's get into it. The first board comes from Kaylee. Thank you, Kaylee. This one really caught my eye because of one specific pin, which is of some sort of creature, possibly made of mud, I think, maybe stone, crouching in a patch of grass amongst a bog with tattered fabric hanging off of it, or maybe leaves or something. And there is this patch of long dried grass in the background that sort of swoops all in the same direction. And when I'm not looking directly at it, it sort of looks like a wing coming from the creature. That pin is just so cool, and every time I open the board, that's where my eyes immediately go. But the rest of the board is also really cool. This is one of the few boards that had a bit of a darker tone to it, something purposefully dark. There's something specifically eerie about a lot of these pins. There is a definite feeling of decay and grunginess. Since the last 4 characters were all pretty brightly colored and felt more on the fun side, I thought having a character like this would be a cool break from that. The board isn't super cohesive or direct, which means I had to do a lot of the thinking on my own, which is great. It also means that there were some pins that got a bit disregarded. My favorite pins were the ones of statues in or under the water. Forgotten statues have such a unique feel and vibe to them, and I thought that would be a great start to the character. I was so drawn to that one creature pin I already talked about, and I really wanted to capture that same creepy, kind of watched vibe, so I tried to emulate that same weird, crouched position. I initially was going with some sort of statue that moved when people weren't looking, but while sketching her out, I thought she was really giving off gargoyle vibes, so I decided to lean into that with horns, tusks, the distinctive wings, and a tail. She's entirely gray, because of course she's supposed to be made of stone. She's a gargoyle. When doing the coloring, I kept feeling like there wasn't enough depth and she was way too one-toned, her hair wasn't dark enough, there was no contrast anywhere. And while I do think I could have pushed the shadows a lot more and given her more depth, I think it makes sense that she's so neutral and that, her hair isn't super dark because, again, she's a gargoyle creature. Her hair would have been carved out of the same color stone, so in that way it does make sense. I did, on a whim, decide to give her this sort of blue blush on her face, and I immediately regretted it. I think if I was going to do that, I should have really stuck to the color palette with a green, but, whatever, it's fine. I don't think she really needs any sort of blush or anything at all, in retrospect, but of course it's too late now. She also has glowing green eyes to emulate the water that she resides in, and of course she's covered in moss. Some of it dangles off of her body, some of it is that super light dusting of moss that kind of just discolors the rock, but you can't really see the plant itself. I also wrapped a leaf of swamp seaweed around her arm, but I only did that one. I only did one leaf, so I don't know if that reads super well. Her hair is actual hair, even though, she is a stone gargoyle. I think she's sort of coming to life a little bit, so her hair is real, and in this drawing, it's damp and clinging to her body or hanging limply around her face. The pose is, of course, her crouching amongst rocks in a swampy bog thing, watching you with like a weirdly blank and empty expression. I don't think it's as creepy and menacing as I was hoping for. I didn't want to literally copy the post of the creature from the Pinterest board, but I do think I strayed a bit too far because it's not quite the same feeling. But I do think that the super simple color palette and kind of empty design of her body and stuff does achieve the weird, ominous feeling I was going for. So, her story. This is a weird gargoyle statue that for some reason resides in a swampy bog area of water. But it's no longer just a gargoyle. Maybe the original statue is still there, and this is the odd spirit of it that now haunts the area. Maybe one day it just disappeared when she came to life. Maybe sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not while she's roaming around. But over the many, many years that she's been watching over the swamp, she slowly started to come to life. She's become more and more active, quickly becoming a locally infamous cryptid. But I don't think it's as simple as a weird creature making scary noises outside your door at night, or eating your pets or stealing your crops. I think that this is a death omen. If you're unlucky enough to make eye contact with her, you're done for. She's super fast and sneaky and silent when moving. She'll trick you into looking at her by at first blending in with the surroundings. Maybe you'll see something weird or wrong, or maybe even moving out of the corner of your eye. Maybe you turn to look and nothing's there, but you feel something watching you, so you look back and there she is, crouching in the water, just staring at you. Impossibly still as a statue, her empty eyes boring into yours, absolutely no expression on her face. And you're stuck there, frozen, like you yourself have been turned to stone. Your body goes cold and you can't look away, you're just waiting for her to move, but she doesn't. Not until minutes later, and you're forced to blink, finally, and when you open your eyes again, she's gone. You think maybe you're crazy because all of that was impossible. Like there's nowhere she could have gone without making noise. There's no way she was real at all. It must have been a trick of the light. It was just that weird rock or that tree maybe. But you're filled with dread and nervous and scared and you can't calm down for the next few days. That feeling of dread follows you. You're always checking over your shoulder or afraid to even go outside. Until finally, it's time for you to meet your maker. Yeah, I really like the story. I really like the concept. I think it's fun. I think it's spooky. I love a spooky story. I think this one turned out great. I don't think it's super true to the board, but I do love the journey I went on to get where we got. So yeah, I'm super, super happy with this first one. Board number 2 was submitted by Tilda. Slay board Tilda. What really cinched this board for me was the classic artwork featured here, especially the John William Waterhouse piece. I love Mr. Waterhouse. I also really love the pin of the girl with the very 60s or 50s-ish hair. I can't quite place it. I'm horrible at fashion eras, but to me it was giving very Priscilla Presley, classic Americana, Lana Del Rey, and I can't lie, I love that aesthetic, so I thought it would be really, really cool to go down that route. So this board also featured lots of lily pads, possibly some Spanish moss, basically classic swamp vibes. I'm not surprised by how much I was drawn to so many swampy boards. Living in Florida, I literally have a mini swamp in my backyard. I've really grown to love them over the past few years. I think they're beautiful. So yeah, it's not shocking that I was picking so many boards that were so swamp heavy. However, I didn't want all the characters to be swamp related. So technically speaking, for my purposes, this girly pop is not in the swamp, she's in the bayou. And those are two different things, two distinct bodies of water. So Miss Girl is absolutely serving some Belle of the Ball, Deep South, classic Americana vibes. It's quite a mishmash of aesthetics, but I can so clearly see the vision. To me, it all comes together so perfectly. So I hope you guys are able to see it too. I actually think it's very slay and could be a really, really beautiful aesthetic on its own. But yeah, that's what this board was making me think of almost immediately. I knew I wanted to do a mermaid. Obviously, I wasn't doing many mermaids, like actual mermaids. Out of 8 total characters between these 2 videos, only 2 are actual mermaids, including this one. And because this board and the Bayou factor weren't really pointing to anything distinctly, like there was no specific story being told, I thought that this was like a perfect option to just make into a classic mermaid. There was nothing else that I kind of needed to lean into. And honestly, this girl does not have a story. I have no plot or motivation in mind for her at all. So her design really isn't driven by any of that or has any sort of context to it. Honestly, I think she's really kind of just a mermaid vibing in the bayou with the other mer people and animals there. If anything, I think she'd probably be in some sort of Peter Pan type world where, like those are the mermaids that come to mind. When I look at her the most, I'm picturing the Peter Pan mermaids. but again, like a Southern Bayou version. She's very nice and polite and very Southern Belle vibes, like I said. I think her story would include humans in some way, mainly because the bayous that I'm thinking of are not deep waters. There's not really like room for a whole city down there. These mermaids would be hanging out on banks and weaving through tree roots, and they'd definitely be visible to anyone venturing out into the bayou. So let's talk about her design. She's got the beehive-ish hair from the Pinterest board because I was just so obsessed with that pin and that hair. I think it's really cute. I looked up some pictures of Americana-inspired makeup, some pictures of Priscilla Presley and Lana Del Rey, and decided to go for an eye that was very smoky in the outer corners with a hint of blue eyeshadow, although I don't know how well that picks up. She's also got really red lips that are very defined. I don't know. I thought it looked cute. I don't know if that's really particularly the makeup, but I liked it. In her hair is a water lily flower as well as some strung pearls, which were added kind of as an afterthought, but I think they add so much to the design. I also gave her pearl earrings and pearl bracelets. I think because, like she's naked, like she's entirely naked and her tail is just a tail. I think the jewelry and the hair adds that sort of elegance, that done up and higher maintenance feel, even though she's obviously wearing nothing to communicate that at all. So I think that added some nice detail, some thought, like it makes her look like she is dressed up, despite not being dressed up. She's also brushing her hair. Again, I think it sort of alludes to her personality and that Americana feel. I also wanted her to be doing some sort of action or interacting with some sort of prop just to make the pose more interesting and to make her feel more like a real character. She's sitting propped against a tree, one of those trees that grow in swampy areas that have like the weird visible roots. I think they're cypress trees. I have them in my backyard, but I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm pretty sure they're cypress trees because we have cypress knees. So I'm making an educated guess. There's also some Spanish moss hanging down that blows in the wind. I only scribbled that stuff in because this challenge is not about scenery, it's about the character. I was not going to put a bunch of work into that. But yeah, she's lounging against the tree with her tail pulled up to relax, comfortably in the shallow area of the water. Her tail is supposed to mimic some possible bayou fish. I did look up fish in the bayou and was going to base her tail off of like a specific one, make it match color-wise and pattern-wise, but in the end I decided to kind of just go for it because I already knew the colors that I wanted to use. I had picked her skin tone with the idea that it would sort of blend in a bit with the tail. I'm sorry. Which it ended up not doing that at all. It was way more red toned than it had looked at first. I thought it was going to be a bit more golden or yellowy and it would blend into the tail better, but whatever. So she's got lots of multicolored scales going along the side of her tail, as well as some spots, which I think is just a cute fishy touch. Overall, I'm happy with this design. I think the pose and the action is much more believable than my last mermaid pose. It feels much more grounded. I am definitely very happy with her. Let's take a break from the characters to talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one website platform that allows freelancers, creatives, entrepreneurs, small business owners to stand out online and be successful. I think website design can be pretty intimidating for a lot of people if it's not something you've done before. So many websites make it so complicated just to make a simple website, but Squarespace has made it so easy and accessible. You can start creating your website with one of their flexible templates. No matter what look you're going for, no matter what your website is about, they're gonna have a template that works for you. But if it's not quite perfect, you can always fully customize it to fit your specific needs. You can customize it with Fluid Engine, which is a next-generation website design software built right into Squarespace. This is literally a drag and drop tool, so it makes it so incredibly easy for you to literally every single inch customize your website. But designing the website isn't the only thing Squarespace makes easy. It also makes running your entire business easy. You can make your Squarespace website your point of sale system. Just attach a Square Reader to the app, and you can use it to keep track of orders, inventory, and customer information. Basically anything you can need to be successful online, continue your business, or represent yourself professionally, Squarespace has. If that's something that interests you, if you want to start representing yourself online, or you'd like to take your business to the next level, check out Squarespace. You can go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, you can go to squarespace.com/Lilstarnerd for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thank you for checking out Squarespace. Now, let's get back into the character design. This board was ever so kindly made by Dorian. The visuals and colors of this board are absolutely stunning. Every time I look at it, it feels so magical and happy and summery and beautiful. There's also this luxurious feeling to it, like an elegance. This was a board that really appealed to me. It was really calling to me, but it did take longer for me to figure out what exactly I wanted to do with it. This board is also where my steam really started to run out. Despite the fact that I still loved all the boards I had picked out between these two videos, I was starting to feel a little worn down with the theme and the process and even the characters. I've definitely learned for next time, do not do two character design challenges in a row, no matter how many of the boards I love. It's not worth it. So this character took a bit longer to figure out, and even after I had a concept in mind, it took me a couple days to get her design any sort of fleshed out, and I never felt super satisfied with it. In fact, I left most of her design blank and waited until the final sketch to fully figure out what I was doing. I think that lack of momentum and running out of steam really brought the level down for this, and also the next character, which is a total bummer, but I don't think they're total losses either. So for this board, there's a huge emphasis on clams and pearls, other shells as well, but mostly pearls. I thought on it for a while because honestly, nothing was immediately jumping out at me, but after spending some time with the pins, I was feeling very inspired. There are a few pins of women. One is a painting of a woman being swept away by a wave, seagulls pulling at her limbs. Another is the back of a woman with long hair dumping water from a conch shell over her head. And the last is a statue of a woman sitting with her legs together, arms outstretched, perfectly in line with the water level. These pins are what really drove this character. I was picturing a woman who just sits on a rock amongst the waves of the ocean all day, but what is she doing out there, and why is she there? And that's where the pearl comes in. This woman is a guardian of this magical, special, sought-after pearl. She is a magical nereid who exists off nothing but the salt water, the occasional fish that lands in her lap offered up by the sea. So she sits all day on a rock that barely breaks the surface of the water, waves constantly reaching up to keep her cool in the hot sun. And in her lap, she delicately holds a clam that contains this beautiful pearl. This pearl is super, super famous. Like explorers and treasure hunters and pirates all over the world have heard about this pearl and they want it for themselves. Some say it gives you powers or immortality or riches, and it's her job that when these men come looking for the ocean's beautiful treasure, she protects it at all costs. But she's just one woman, and she's like stuck to this rock. Like there's nowhere else for her to go. She's not going anywhere, and while she's powerful and strong and probably even has some control over the water, she has no weapons and can't defeat a whole crew or fleet herself. That's why she has an army of mermaids and nereids at her disposal. They do whatever they must to protect the pearl. They act as sirens, secretly board boats to wreak havoc and kill the men, command sharks and fish to steer the boat away or attack the rowboats. There are hundreds of them who live just below the surface of the water, and they all worship our beautiful guardian. Her pose is based off the pose of the statue. I just love the way the legs were positioned. It felt very regal. So I was trying to go for regal and powerful and imposing, but again, I'm just not sure that really worked. I don't know if that reads. I also wanted the pearl to be on display to the audience, but I think that really killed the pose. Like, it looks very awkward, very strange. Her hands aren't really visible and her arms don't make sense. She's adorned in a lot of smaller pearls. I think it would be cute if like the clam produces small delicate pearls just for her to wear as like a thanks for her protection. She's also wearing like burlap or fabric wrapped around her. It's tied with a rope. Honestly, I don't know. It's not good. I don't like it. I'm not thrilled with that design choice, but I didn't know what else to do, and I just didn't want her to be naked. I wanted her to have more going on with her design because it's not like she has any other elements to her. You know, she doesn't have a tail. She doesn't have anything. She's fully human, so there's not like a whole lot going on in her design, so I didn't want her to just be a naked lady. But I couldn't think of anything, so we went with wrapped fabric, and it's not great. For the woman herself, I referenced some photos of Hawaiian women, and from those photos I also got the idea of the flower crown. There are also shells and pearls throughout the crown, but I'm not sure that you can tell. I don't know if that's like visible. I also tried to draw the water and foam crashing against the rock she was sitting on, but I didn't know how to draw that, and again, the setting is not the point of this challenge, so I just scribbled. I feel like this design is not really strong. I think the drawing and pose and expression aren't expressive enough. I don't think the story is clear. I don't think it's saying anything. I do like it, like I'm not mad at the drawing itself, but I think I could have done way better if I wasn't burned out by the time I got to her. And finally, this board comes from Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah. When I initially was going through the boards for the first time, I immediately knew I wanted to use this board. It was so cool, so unique. I love the quote that Sarah included. It feels so weird and unsettling, and there is so much potential here for a really cool story. I love the inclusion of the giant squid/octopus. I love the dystopian feeling going on. It felt so cool and different, and I knew I wanted to explore this concept. However, it didn't make it into the cut of the first video because a character design was just not coming to me. So I decided to save it for this video, but when I started doing the rough sketches, I was running into the same problem. I was just really struggling to come up with anything unique or interesting, so I kept bumping it into like a later slot, and it ended up being the last character that I drew today, which meant it's the one that received the least amount of effort and was most affected by my lack of motivation and energy. So while I do think this drawing is still acceptable, I think it's definitely the weakest, which is super disappointing because I think this board is absolutely stunning. So the reason this was so hard to come up with any sort of character is because the character is super hinged on the old-fashioned diving suit. And while I could do some fun changes to that, it'll still just kind of look like a diving suit. And if the helmet is on, which is like the iconic part of the suit, then you can't really see the face. And even if you see the face, it's just gonna be like a face. And if the character is underwater, then they have to have the helmet on. So I was really struggling to come up with anything that wasn't just literally redrawing a diving suit. And still, that's pretty much what I ended up with. At this point, this far into the drawing process, even just sketch-wise, like the sketch, I was already just like, the last two characters have been really hard to come up with, including this one, so I was feeling pretty burnt out. So I gave up on the idea of an interesting pose, so he's literally just standing there. However, I did include an octopus tentacle, which does come from his story, just in hopes of making him look a little more interesting. His helmet is sitting on the ground, so he's obviously not actively diving, so he's also missing some of the tubes and connectors that I would have liked to include in his design, but I didn't want to not have the helmet there, so it's just sitting on the ground next to him. He's basically just wearing a tan diving suit with patches on the knees and elbows. I think that is part of the traditional diving suit design, but he also has a tactical vest on that has like pockets and pouches. Like a traditional diving suit usually has that on the belt. He's got a rope on his shoulder. Honestly, don't know why, but I felt like it added something to an otherwise very boring and empty and unoriginal design. The only thing that kind of shows anything interesting is the scar on the man's face, which also comes from his story. The story is not well fleshed out at all, but it's what I had originally thought of when I looked at the board, and by the time I got around to fully fleshing him out, I had, like I said, lost motivation. So it's weak, but I do still like it. I think there's still so much potential here. But here you go. Basically, this is a scientist from the mid-1700s who has slowly lost his mind after spending way too much time underwater. He's part of a secret association or government group or something that is trying to research the secrets of the ocean so they can harness its power. While down there, he discovers a giant octopus beast and in his madness creates a psychotic rivalry with it. He sabotages the research, lies to his superiors to try and trick them into following the octopus, and he does all he can to kill or capture it. He's convinced that it's watching him even when he's on land, it's trying to kill him, or is evil, or knows some sort of secret or something. Like, he fully believes that this is a fully sentient and powerful being. His scar comes from a tussle with the octopus in which the octopus accidentally drove his own spear through his helmet and it scraped along his brow and eye and cheek, blinding him in that eye. And now, of course, he's even more angry and hoping to get his revenge. I do think the octopus would be a very intelligent creature who can recognize this man. I don't think it would be evil, but I think that would also be a fun twist. But it would probably just be a misunderstood beast that this association is unrightfully trying to kill. But that's it. That's literally all I've got. He's definitely the weakest design, and I'm not gonna lie, I really consider just not coloring him and leaving it as a sketch and just ending it early because I was just not feeling it. But I trucked through anyways and just colored it very lazily. Not my favorite thing I've done. Honestly, I still don't hate it. I think it passes. I think it's still a decent enough character because it was such a good board, but I feel like I kind of let this one down. So sorry. Hey, this is the first time that I've gotten like funky with poses and layouts. Usually it's like 4 people standing in a row. So that's kind of fun that they're, we're in different positions, situations. I'm trying to push myself a little bit with storytelling based on feedback that I've gotten from you guys and just my experience with it. I feel like kind of the storytelling and the story behind each character is not the appeal, but I feel like you guys are really appreciating that, and it's reminding me how much I do love storytelling, and I do want more of that in my art. So I've been trying to lean a little bit more into that. I'm also finding that I think characters are more believable, likable, better designed when they have an obvious story, when they have props and companions and things, and when they're posed in a believable way, not just like standing like so I've been trying to lean more into that, and I feel like, I'm not even gonna lie to you, I feel like the characters did suffer because of that. Obviously, it's another element that I'm adding in that I'm not used to doing, I'm not necessarily good at yet, I don't have the skill built up, and I think my motivation kind of lacked a little bit because I think I pushed myself a little too hard. Doing 2 of the same theme in a row, trying to do something a little bit different, I think I ran out of like steam. But that's fine, that's good to know. But I do think I learned a lot. I think I want to continue kind of doing the different poses and the props and the action, and even giving some sort of, I think I want each character to have some sort of prop, or like companion of some sort. Again, I think characters are just better when they feel more real, and to feel more real, you need some sort of connection to their story or their world. And I think when a character's just standing there in a super basic outfit, that's not giving you anything. So while I do like the characters, I'm not mad at any, I just think that I kind of lacked in delivery. I think I slacked a little bit. So these aren't my favorite, but I do think this was a really productive episode in terms of me learning about the character creation and design process, which is what I really want. That's really what I'm looking for, is I'm looking to learn every time I do this, and I feel like I learned a lot today. So I'm very happy. Thank you so much to anyone who submitted a board. I really, really appreciate your help. You have no idea how much it means to me that you guys are so excited to like do that and work with me. It means so much every time you guys are just enthusiastic about what I'm doing. You guys are so amazing at giving me like positive feedback and helpful critique sometimes. It's just, you guys are great, and I really appreciate you. But that's it. That's all I got to say. That's all I have for today. Again, thank you so much. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring. Make sure you check them out. The link is in the description. Yeah, that's it. Talk to you later.